we had a mishap with Zoom where it was being used by another meeting and that meeting was going over, but it looks like everybody's getting their info and dialing in. This whole Zoom virtual captain's meeting is really turning out to be great because I feel like we're getting better participation than ever. Always tough to get away for an evening, but today everybody saw the agenda. Hopefully we sent around the agenda of the things we're going to go through. I also attached a 2-page, like an FAQ document, which, of course we're here for any questions, but I feel like 80% of the questions we receive are basically what's outlined on these 2 pages. So if you're ever looking for information like when can my player join my 55 and over league, how old do they have to be, or what's the maximum amount of level players, or what's the last day to register a player, you'll find the answers to those questions on that document. And again, we're here for any of that. So we have today on our call Christy Bennett, who is our new director of USTA Leagues. Thank you, Christy. She's calling in from, is that like the Harry Potter?
No, it's the Hall of Fame. I'm obsessed with the Hall of Fame.
I always wanted to go.
Oh my gosh, field trip.
Yes. And I think this year it's Leighton Hewitt.
And the original 9, Billie Jean King in the original 9.
And Leighton Hewitt. So Christy Bennett, she'll give us a little bit of an introduction from a section perspective, just a little bit of an insight to, the championships are on as far as we know. So a little more insight on that. We have John Pagano, who's our Connecticut State League Committee Chair, who's doing a lot of great work with the different committees and driving some new initiatives. Maybe he'll say a few words. I will go over our upcoming leagues, and I've been in touch with many of you in the meantime already, planning our summer. And as usual, Andrew Taylor will go over some of the more regulations type work and go over any issues that pop up and things to keep in mind, especially in light of COVID and kind of the more sensitive environment with that. So with that, John, do you mind just kind of kicking it off, and then Christy will pick up?
Sure. Yeah, I'd just like to say, thank everybody. Welcome. I'm kind of excited to kick off the new season coming up. Hopefully, as time progresses, some of the restrictions that we've had may loosen up, but it's obviously always up to the states. But again, very excited to start going and playing again, and finishing off and maybe having, as I said, some of a more normal season. But that's basically it. This was I just had our first meeting for a new state league committee, which is great. A lot of the members of it, you may know across the board. And we're basically just coming together to find some new ideas. And again, just trying to make the experience more enjoyable. And as we start playing, if any changes come up, Andrew's going to talk to you about the regulations, but basically just keeping ears open. And that's it. We're just excited to keep on going for the next season. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, and some of you who were on the call were on that first meeting, and I was just telling John, it didn't feel like a first meeting. Everybody was just really so engaged. It felt like the third or fourth meeting. Everybody was ready with ideas, and there was none of that sort of awkwardness and trying to come up to speed. So that was fabulous. So the next on the agenda is some special events and Facebook related stuff, as well as any events coming up from initiatives from the section's perspective. So Christy, maybe if you wanted to talk a little about that, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you guys for being on, and sorry about the last minute change again. We apologize for that. But I did want to kind of give you guys an update as we start moving into the spring and the summer, and a lot of things have changed with staffing, with Heather's retirement, who, we've got big shoes to fill, but we have some ideas on some ways we want to go. So I just wanted to give you guys kind of an idea of what we're going to be looking at for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and trying to grow tennis in all the areas. A couple of the main directives that we've got right now is going to be volunteer recruitment and engagement. And that's going to be captains and committees and event volunteers. And we're just really trying to bring more people in to the fold that would like to help. And if you have special skills and want to be a part of it. So kind of be watching for those. And if you have any ideas of things that might help grow tennis, we're all ears these days. The other one is going to be entry level. We've, with COVID, we've seen a huge uptick, about 30% in purchases of entry level equipment for adults and for kids. So for the adult league, we're going to try to connect to some of those new players and see if we can get them hooked in as well. And then one of my other kind of main focuses is to connect our league players and captains into the other areas of USTA New England that maybe have been separated before. And part of that is the community department, the adult tournament department, so that if there's anything out there, tennis related, USTA related, you know that you're integrated, you feel comfortable, you're willing to, you know who to reach out to if you have questions. So along that lines, our community department is hiring. We're doing a great program. It's Tennis in the Parks, where we hire coaches and then they teach beginner kids and adults in certain areas. It is a paid position, no experience needed. It's in the parks, outdoors, spring, summer, fall, a bunch of areas. So if you guys want to do that or know of anybody that might want to do that, please let us know. And then we're going to start trying to connect a little bit more to some of the outdoor spaces where people would like to maybe play. We love our clubs and we want to build a bigger foundation for our clubs as well. So that's kind of how we're going right now. And if you guys ever have any questions, you always reach out to Susanna. You can always reach out to me as well and let us know what you're thinking and, how you think we can help and how we can help grow the game in Connecticut.
Great. Did you want to say a few things about the championship calendar in a season, Christy? Anything they should keep in mind aside from the fact that they're on?
Right. So as of right now, all the championships are on. We have the section championship. We're making 3 kind of contingency plans. One contingency plan as if COVID doesn't exist, and this is how it was supposed to be. So it'll be very similar to what it was supposed to have been in 2020 in the same areas. We're also making a plan where if COVID is not allowing us to have big groups inside, what do we do outdoors? And also one, if we can't travel because of travel restrictions. And then also trying to keep in mind that there may be some other things that come up. So as of right now, we're having championships. The national calendar has posted and the section calendar has posted. So, we're excited. We get started this summer and we're ready to get back to championships.
Great, thank you so much. So just to continue with that, and many of you have been living this as you had your fall winter teams going on, we have been playing, we did have a 10-week pause between Thanksgiving and February 1st, but now we're back on the courts, we're playing. We do have restrictions and all of that information. Maybe we'll take some of the questions towards the end, but thanks for that. That's a good question. Some of that information is posted on the Southern Connecticut USTA website. So what we have is we have COVID guidelines for both the facilities and players. And really most of you who have teams this season have been living that. And a lot of it is really pretty common sense, call ahead and arrange for payments ahead of time. Don't stick around after the match, come 5 or 10 minutes before, leave promptly after. And I have not really been told of any issues with that. So that is going really great. Masking is required. Masking is required for doubles. It is up to the facility with singles. So if the facility does not require it, you don't have to wear it. But if the facility does require it, you'll have to abide by that. Again, I have not had any issues, on a captain end, and I know you've been dealing with this on your end, and thanks for doing that, really managing this COVID situation. You have players who, maybe got the virus or were exposed to it, or close contacts. You want to make sure you really follow the procedures and maybe even beyond, and just make sure, we're not putting anybody in a sensitive situation. And Andrew will talk a little more about that. So, thank you for sticking with the quarantine periods. Please don't cut them close. We had a bit of an update, I believe, at the end of last year, where now it's not 2 weeks. They're sort of like, it's a stratified quarantine period where if you're not showing symptoms, you can test after day 5, where that is shortened. So, just stay on top of that and know what is required, and just, understandably, everybody's a little jumpy. So everything we can do to make other people comfortable that we're on a court with, so that we can continue to play, that would be really appreciated. Again, all of those guidelines, as well as the easy reference sheet, which I understand is actually helpful. Many captains use it, and our timeline is all posted on the Southern Connecticut USTA website. So going on to the upcoming season. So as you know, we had to suspend play for about 10 weeks. So that's really 2.5 months of play. And we, as a result, extended the season to go into the end of April, and in some cases, even early May. So it's almost like, we're stuck on the tarmac and we're late taking off for 2 hours, but we're only getting to our destination an hour late. So we were able to catch up and make up some of that time, but understandably, that really kind of pushes, it snowballs into the other season. So as a result, we're starting our spring and summer leagues later than we normally do. And really, in all the cases, really overlapping the seasons, which is really going to be very challenging. But we felt that that was a really better solution than having to cut out any particular league. Many people, they wait an entire year to play, 55 and over, 65 and over, 40 and over mixed. It would be unfair to cut anything out to run other leagues as normal. So you will see the dates that are listed. So you'll see everything's a bit compressed. Many of you have multiple teams and participate in multiple leagues. So this is going to be a really pretty busy season. So we're going to make it work. So I think we've had a pretty nice turnout so far. The deadline for mixed 40 and over and 55 and over was yesterday. And if you didn't get to it and you still plan to have a team, drop me a note. But I think we're in okay shape. So we'll be able to have matches at every level, just about every level. The deadline for 18 and over men and women is Monday the 8th. So, take your time. If you have any questions, let me know. I like to think I run a pretty, inclusive process where I talk to the captains and, I work with their flights and just ask them what they want. Do they want a lot of matches or do they want fewer matches? And, whatever works for everyone, that's what we'll put in place, within obviously the time constraints that we have. So that's where we are. I think next on the agenda, maybe we'll just go through everything and then start answering questions if that's okay with everyone. Next on our agenda was a section on COVID, and I know we covered much of this, but if Christy wants to add anything before we go on to Andrew, maybe Christy, you can do that. But I think maybe the waiver section or something like that, if there's anything you want to add to it. I think none of this is new to the captains, but just as a reminder.
Yeah, we appreciate your diligence with the COVID restrictions and whether or not there are mask mandates and all of the crazy that's kind of been going on. If you guys will just make sure that all of your players have signed the waiver. Again, they only have to have signed it once, and that's one time from the very beginning of this. But if you happen to have any new players or somebody who's been on injury or injured reserve or something like that, if you'll make sure that they please have signed it so that we can make sure everybody's on the same page. And if you have any questions about any of the COVID guidelines, always feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And just one important thing I wanted to add, in light of kind of coming back to play, we had several teams that just had to drop out because they either couldn't play, they couldn't get their players to play or they didn't want to play with masks. So for several reasons. So we had a bit of, maybe 4 teams drop out. For the ones that are playing, thank you. And just so you know, for this year, normally there's a cap on how many courts you are allowed to default. And this year, we will not penalize any captains for having excessive defaults as long as they play the majority of courts in their match. So if it's a 4-court format, you can play 3 courts and 1 never happens, we're not going to penalize you, which, typically we would for having excessive defaults, just because we understand this is a tough year to get all of that together. Andrew, did you want to take over and just start talking about the regulations and sportsmanship a little bit before we open it up for questions? I think you're on mute, Andrew. I'm sorry. Christy, I'm not hearing Andrew. Is he muted?
I don't know. Hold on, let me check.
You may have to activate his computer audio again.
He is not muted right now. While he's working on that, I can give a quick answer about the question about who's keeping track of the waivers. We're keeping track of those at the section. The JotForm platform that we use gives us a master list that we can continually go back and check. So we do keep track of who's signed and who hasn't.
And you may remember this in the beginning of fall, you wouldn't, but we run lists of players who are registered who don't have waivers on file, and I reach out individually to those players to go ahead and do that, in addition to what you do kind of as your initiative as captains.
Okay, can I be heard now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me. Great, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone. Sorry about that glitch. Yeah, as just before we leave the COVID, just a reminder that if you have players who are exhibiting something that could be a symptom of COVID, even if they know that it's actually something else, but it is something like a cough or something that could be exhibited as COVID. In this environment, it causes unnecessary stress to everyone. So it's better that they don't show up to play. So just a reminder to captains of that. And as Susanna said, we're cutting people a lot of slack at the present time, even as regards, as you know, we have a fairly strict rule on rescheduling of matches and playing the majority of courts. But if it is genuinely COVID related because someone is not feeling well enough or has a potential exposure, then we'd rather cut that team some slack than have someone show up who perhaps shouldn't. As we go through the year and hopefully return to normality, we'll tighten things up, but certainly that's not going to happen before the September start. Getting on to the actual rules, no big changes in the 2021 rules. Two things that really only affect a minority of teams, so I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. At the national level, they've removed 2 of the plus league levels, the 40 and over 4.5 and upwards, and the 18 over 5 plus level. I won't say too much more about that, just to point that out. Also, tri-level, there are not a lot of people involved in tri-level, but I want to briefly touch on something because we are reviewing one rule change request that has come up. Sorry, let me just quiet my phone, it keeps dinging. Okay. One rule change request has come up regarding tri-level. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, tri-level is where you have a team that is fielding, for example, a 4-0, a 3-5, and a 3-0 flight. It's fairly unusual, but it's to give teams from a club the opportunity to play together, even though they may not have the same rating. Now, the rule change is suggesting that at the 4-0 level, so let's say the D1 court is the 4-0 level, that at least one of the 2 players must be at that level. In other words, if it's the 4-0 flight level, you can't field 2 3-5s. That's the suggested rule change. Now, the reason for the rule change is to preserve the quality of play. Obviously, the downside is that it might make it harder sometimes to field the required number. So what I'm going to say here is that if you have an interest in tri-level, if you are on a team and have a comment on that rule change, please email Susanna, who will forward it to me. Rather than open up a discussion which isn't going to affect most people, I would say please email Susanna and she'll forward me any comments you may have. The other thing briefly on tri-level is that we in Southern Connecticut do it a little differently from some other leagues, in that we still have one captain who deals with the 3 different levels in a tri-level team. Other sections don't do that. They have a captain or a coordinator for each level. And that does reflect what happens post-season, because, for instance, if you take a tri-level team to nationals and they're representing New England, they won't necessarily all come from the same club. One flight might come from Milford, one will come from Rhode Island, one will come from Eastern Mass within that to make up that team. So if, again, tri-level people have a comment on whether we should still keep to one captain or whether you'd like to look at changing that structure, please put it in an email to Susanna and she will forward it on so the Rules Committee can take a look at that. Just a reminder that if people do have rules proposals, in other words, you want a rule changed or added, then that submission, and there's a form on the website for you to submit any rule changes, that needs to be done by May the 1st in order for the change to be considered for the following year. So May the 1st is the deadline if you wish to submit any rule changes. I really think that's probably it on the rules side, other than answering questions. I do just want to briefly touch on, when I took this job over, I took it over from Rich Bisk, who had been doing that for a long time. And as you all remember, Rich was very big on sportsmanship and making sure we always exhibited sportsmanship where there was not a rule to particularly cover it. There's 2 issues that have come up and continue to come up, which I categorize more as sportsmanship issues. The first one is pre-match warm-up. People say, well, what happens if I turn up, I may be the away team, I turn up and all the opposing side are on court warming up, but I don't get to go on until the match time and warm up. I think this is a sportsmanship issue. If you're the host club and there are courts available, please make sure that you offer the away team the same opportunity you have for a little extra warm-up time. I think that's just the sporting thing to do. There's not a rule that covers it. There's not a rule that says that you can't book a court for half an hour before, but as much as possible, please try to be fair and make sure that both teams have the same opportunity. The other thing is just a reminder that we get comments about players who have self-rated for a team, and it's apparent when the match comes, or at least thought when the match comes, that, hey, isn't this person actually playing at a level much higher than what they've self-rated at? Now, there is a rule in place for that. After a certain period of time and a certain level of results, that player, if they've self-rated, can be DQ'd. In other words, all their, it's considered that yes, they self-rated incorrectly and their level is actually higher, and they will not only be stopped from continuing to play at that level, but they will lose the points for the team that they've accrued for the wins, and they will go to the other side. So that is a warning, but I'd like to suggest it more from the sportsmanship angle. Captains, you need to be aware. You normally know if someone is actually has self-rated but is playing above that ability. And really, it's not sporting to continue to play them at that level if you really know that's not true. You do risk a DQ and losing the points, but do the right thing. So they were the only two things I specifically wanted to mention. Again, as Susanna said, when she calls the time, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, let's see. Trying to see what the chat questions were. Maybe we'll take it from there. Question 1, will there be a penalty if not every member of the team has played 2 matches this season? So not so much a penalty, but in order to qualify for championships, Julia, if your team is moving on to districts or sectionals, each player that plays in championships has to have at least 2 matches, one of which can be a default. So there's no penalty if players have not played 2 matches, but you need to have to qualify for championships. And I believe that has not been lifted, right, Christy?
Yeah, that has not been lifted. That'll still be the case this coming year.
Right. So if that does not answer your question, Julia, type away. Let's see. Ellen, I do wonder if there are championships in June, how likely out-of-state teams are to travel to Massachusetts? If the championships are indoors, it seems unlikely the teams can gather to watch their team matches. Hotels, restaurants. For Connecticut, Vermont, and some other areas, it's often not just about the matches, but the team travel experience. For sections within an hour of Boston can go home. I wonder the enthusiasm for going away for a championship weekend. I mean, I guess we'll just have to deal with it as we get closer, right? I mean, there's nothing we can do to replace that spirit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. We all love the going away for the whole weekend, and we'll do our best to do as much as we can. But, until COVID is gone completely, we're just, like I said, we'll make several contingency plans to make sure that championships happen, and we get as many people to be able to play as possible. So we'll do our best and keep everything in mind.
And just really on a COVID end, I watched the weekly press conferences that our governor has. I watched the daily numbers. The numbers have really stabilized. They're between 2 and 3% positivity rate. We're getting huge waves of vaccinations going on now. The 55 and over started yesterday. The 45 and over will be starting in less than a month. So, I'm really optimistic that it'll happen. And I think neighboring states, if they don't already follow, they will be following that. So I think we'll certainly have a better idea in the next month or two. The good news is we have some time to kind of adjust. Maria, are you keeping track if players have signed waivers? Yeah, so what happens is, and I'll have to do a refresh of that, and we kind of do that periodically because it's a really pretty big manual exercise for the person who runs kind of our internal IT initiative, and that is really, he runs this massive list of all the players, which you can imagine for all of New England is thousands and thousands of players who are signed up on teams but do not have waivers on file. So he kind of has to sort of parse those lists. And the fallout of that is, we have to go through and make sure there are valid email addresses on file. And if there aren't, we have to find them, and we contact the players and say, hey, you're signed up on a team, but you have not signed a waiver, please do so. And again, that stuff, as we get closer, that was a pretty big initiative that was done in fall before, in September, October. We'll have to start again for the summer. So do your part in urging your players to sign the waivers, and we'll do our part in monitoring and kind of auditing that. Who is tracking sign waiver? Okay, thank you, Brian. Yeah, so I think I just answered that. Maria, to everyone, is there a limit to the number of self-rated players on a roster? No, there's not. Catherine, can you change the rules so when you play a self-rated player, your rating moves? I've had many instances where people are trying to move up and play against a self-rated player, and therefore the match essentially doesn't count. I think this is completely, I have zero experience in this and zero expertise, rather. Anybody wants to comment on this? Andrew or Christy?
I'm sorry, I didn't fully understand the issue.
I don't either. I don't really know how the rating dynamics work.
When you look at the ratings on some of the unofficial, not USTA, but unofficial rating sites, every time you're against, whether it's your partner or one of the opponents, the match essentially doesn't count for the person other than the person who's self-rated. And it's just frustrating to a lot of team members, myself included, who, take the time to maybe drive an hour, pay $40 to play a 2-hour match, take time off, and then somebody's self-rated and your rating doesn't go up. It's an issue. It's happened a lot. If you look at the ratings, if you play a self-rated opponent, it says your ratings don't move. Only the self-rated person kind of gets up and down. So I was just wondering if that's actually true, or if that's just the way the other sites show the ratings.
But you're talking about the non-USTA ratings, the other.
I'm talking about a non-official rating system, but I believe it's the same for USTA, is it not? That if you play somebody self-rated, because they don't actually have a computer-generated rating, that the match for the other 3 people isn't going to move them up or down. Is that correct?
That I don't know, unless Christy does. I think we'd have to refer that to Peter Shooter, who is the expert, and we can do that and get back to you with an answer.
I think a good segue, guys, is I think Heather Hawks was going to be a speaker at a section-wide captain's meeting, and Heather is, if there's anything about ratings, that someone at USTA knows, it's Heather. So she can go into quite a bit of detail about this, and more information on that captain's meeting will be coming. So if you really care about ratings, that's one you definitely want to attend, because she's in charge of NTRP for USTA National. Is that right, Heather? Chrissy.
Yes, March 25th, 7 o'clock. In the registration link that we create, there'll be a place to ask questions, or you can always send in questions ahead of time to myself or Susanna, because this is the time to grab a hold. She's our digital expert. Pete Shutter also has a ton of information on this as well, because I don't want to guide you incorrectly, but please come on with Heather and ask all the NTRP questions you can think of.
And I will forward that registration link. It literally just came through today to all the captains that were on the invite list. So if you're interested in attending that meeting, are able to, that's one that you can definitely get your questions answered. From Beth, can you write up the proposed tri-level rules so that we can forward it to our captains correctly? Andrew, I think
yes,
you had it already.
I can do a note for you to forward on to people, Susanna.
Thank you. From Mark Russell, none of my team members use Facebook. Can you provide an alternative internet channel to communicate with us? We use Facebook for kind of the major announcements and more social kind of bits, but anything important that goes out on Facebook also goes out via email, Mark. So there's nothing that I'm telling Facebook. I may be able to remind them of something more frequently, like, oh, there's a registration deadline, people. But, I don't want to bug people by email about this, but anything important that goes out via Facebook also goes out by email. So there's nothing outside of that. So I hope that's sufficient. From Julia, will someone's rating be lowered if she did not get to play 2 matches this season? And thanks for answering the previous question. No, your rating moves with the matches you play, but the number of matches you play does not penalize you, if that's your question. Hope I answered that correctly, guys. I know I answered it correctly, but yeah, the number of matches you play doesn't matter. It just moves with whatever match you play. From Dara, if someone self-rates and then realizes they've rated themselves too high, can they contact USTA and get their rating adjusted down? Yeah, you can start the process with me. You can just reach out to me and say, hey, this is what I thought I was, but I'm just smoking my opponents. I think I was wrong. Tell me the process, and I think I can work with Peter, because we certainly don't want you, sometimes people make an honest mistake and you just don't want to go down the path where it's not challenging for you, it's not challenging for your opponents, and it's ultimately going to penalize your team by disqualifying your matches. Would you say that's accurate, Andrew?
Yes, I think if you realize you've self-rated incorrectly, whether it's upwards or downwards, the answer is to contact Susanna, and it can be referred up to New England.
You're on mute for that one, Susanna.
Sorry, can you cover the minimum roster requirements for mixed 40 plus? My understanding is the minimum roster is the one required to field a lineup. So 3 men, 3 women, where the combination does not exceed the combined NTRP of the team you're on. So that's that. I thought you had to play at least 3 matches to generate a year-end rating. That's my understanding as well. But 3 matches in a year, I don't know if you're referring to a previous question about 2 matches to qualify for championships or anything else. I'm trying to understand if there's a tie-in. But yeah, that's my understanding as well.
I think the previous question was rather, if you didn't play enough, would you automatically go down or something? And the answer,
okay.
the answer was no. So from the point of view of, for instance, if you were going to go up, do you have to play a certain minimum number of matches? Yes.
Right. But you're not penalized if you don't. That's it?
I just saw this question too about the 2020, because we did not run year-end ratings and at the end of 2020. I'm sorry, at the end of, the end of 2020, all 2020 and 2021 matches will be compressed. So if you do have 3, it could be over like a 2-year period.
Right. So Myra, just the fact that because you didn't play 3 matches in 2020 is really irrelevant because we didn't run those ratings. All right. Okay, I think that's all we have. I covered everything I wanted to cover, but we're really excited. We're really excited to come back to play. I know I am. I mean, it was a long 10 weeks, and really, you guys have been doing such a great job keeping everybody motivated and keeping everybody organized. I know the players want to play, and they just need someone to guide them and kind of tell them what they need to do and where they need to be. And thank you for doing that, because I just feel like things can change on a dime. And the last year, it doesn't take a lot to shut this thing down. And it's just great that nothing has happened and everybody's well, and we can continue to play. And it feels like this is just the tiniest bit of, normal life that we still have. So thanks for keeping that going.
Susanna? I put one more question in the chat, which was whether your 2020 results will all be applied to your 2021 year-end rating.
That's my understanding. Yes, they will. Okay. So that's all we got. So yeah, any questions? Drop me a note. Andrew is always very responsive. He's always great for any conflict resolution or rule interpretation where I don't want to be the bad guy. We've got a lot of, fresh, new, enthusiastic leadership, and hopefully we can kind of pick this up and get this back where it was.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thanks, Susanna.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.